Good evening, good evening. We are kind of standard how things run on the island. We're about 5 or 6 minutes late, and so that's kind of typical. Anyway, I just have looks like a lot, but it's big font. And I just want to say thank you for coming tonight. I'm Julian, and I'm the blessed guy, or lucky guy that is a manager here. And up in the sound booth is Kevin Jones running the sound and Tom Pratt on the lights. So if you'd help me give him a hand, I'd appreciate that. Cool. Let's see. I just wanted to say a few things here. Going through, we're streaming this on our YouTube channel tonight. And if you want to, it'll be archived there also. So if you want to share that news with anybody or any friends somewhere else that you'd like to share that with, it'll be there to watch. And if they would like to, just by coincidence, donate any money at the TPAC website, that would be great too, for the privilege to be able to watch it, and it helps us out too. We want to thank so many organizations and people that help us put the season and help sponsor the season here. Season here for the summer and the fall takes about $25,000 plus a lot of volunteer work and volunteer performers also. So if you ever are so inclined to help sponsor a program, even $200, $10, $250, anything would help sponsor shows. We certainly would appreciate that very much. And a lot of organizations help us out, like the Lions, and certainly we want to thank the Detroit Harbor Ladies Aid. Yeah, I know, that's worth a hand. I hear, they help so many other nonprofits also, so we are privileged to have their help also. And and when you go to the Twice Around shop, they have wonderful treasures there. So since it's a Twice Around shop, please thank them twice also. That would be nice. And also, so many businesses are in the back of the program that you hopefully picked up on the way in. Some are on the island, some are further away, like Sturgeon Bay, but we hope that you'll support these businesses because they support us, and that would be really kind too. Now, just a couple more shows I want to tell you about coming up quickly at the theater here. This coming Saturday is a joint fundraiser between the TPAC and we're working towards the construction of the Bradley Jordan Gymnasium. And we're going to work together on that. It's a joint fundraiser. And it's going to be a super, I think, fun show, no matter if you bring kids, grandkids. I think it's just fun to watch kids because they are going to enjoy this. There's going to be a ventriloquist / musician. There's going to be a husband and wife musician filling in the gap in between that are part of the Illinois Progressive Bluegrass Band called Miles Over Mountains. And then at the end will be, they have property actually on the north side, haven't built a house yet. Her name is Carenza DeMars, and she is one of the top few flamenco dancers in the country, and she's world renowned also. So she will be here accompanied by an award-winning guitarist. So it's going to be a great variety kind of evening. So we hope you'll come out, and the show's going to be great. It's free will donation, and we hope you'll spread the news. I don't know if we probably won't stream that show, but we hope you'll come out and enjoy it at least. And then right after that, let's see here. Good heavens, I'm spacing out. Oh, then there's going to be a jazz night. We don't have jazz too often here. It's going to be Christopher McFadden, and he's from New York City, and he actually went to school with Matt Cokes. So he is coming in. He's a Grammy-winning, and he is bringing a fantastic vocalist from New York with him, and then he is stopping in Chicago and picking up a few more musicians. So it's going to be a great evening of jazz, and we hope you'll come out and soak it up like a dry sponge, like I will, to say the least. So anyway, we hope you'll stay tuned in to WISL 98.7, the Island radio station, when you're here, or go to the streaming at WashingtonIslandRadio.com to keep in touch with a lot of great things happening here. So anyway, I appreciate so much Stevie Rice for being the archivist and being the kind person that he is. He has helped me out so many times in shows, and he will be helping me, I think he knows this, in other shows coming up. So he will know now. But I want to welcome him, and thank you to the archives. They do so many great, thing is preserving the history of the island, and we are so grateful for that. So thank you much. Here's Stevie Rice. Thank you.
Thank you, Julian. Thank you, Julian. And welcome, everybody. And on behalf of the Archives and the Archives Committee, we thank you for coming out tonight for this presentation about Amos Saunders. Now, as you were looking at this picture here, I was going to say that all the pictures that I'm going to be presenting tonight are from not the 1840s or 1850s, which is mostly the time frame of our subject, but I tried to get a visualization with as many pictures that would match. And here's one of Washington Harbor, and this is a two-masted schooner, just like the ones that Amos Saunders would be using as a ship captain. And this is the Saunders, Craw, Rainey, Young dock area. Schoolhouse Beach would be down in this area, Gastown over here, and this is the dock on the other side. During Saunders' time, these buildings probably weren't here, or they were very much smaller. I think this photo is probably from around 1900. So Amos Saunders, when we first hear that name, some of us might know that he was the first town chairman of Washington Island in 1850, but you wouldn't know much else about him probably, because I didn't know much else about him. When I first came to the archives, all I knew was that he was the chairman, the first chairman, but over the next 7 years, I picked up enough pieces of information to be able to tell some of his life story. But as with many things, the more things you find out about something, the more questions come up. And that's the same true about Amos Saunders. Some of the information that was revealed show a possible dark side of Amos Saunders. And other documents tell of a man who lived a very busy life of distinction, 74 years long. So let's take a little journey about the discoveries I made about Captain Amos Saunders. Oops. When I first learned more about Amos Saunders was inside of Jesse Miner's book, Early Days on Washington Island. Born in 1850, Jesse hand-wrote this before he passed in 1915. It was finally published in 1937 on Washington Island by the Duo Van Publishing Company. And they published it exactly as he had written it, with misspellings and creative wording. We have Jesse's manuscript in the archives, and I've compared it. It's almost exactly. There's nothing extra in there. But it's a wonderful early history of our island, and although it's only 22 pages long, it's chock full of names and dates and great stories, and most of them have checked out as far as being authentic. A few are embellished, but that goes with the time. Now, Jesse writes about Amos Saunders a few times in the book, and the first one is about when they were forming the town in 1850. And this section is called Jesse Boss's Organization of Town. The town of Washington was organized June 20, 1850 on Rock Island on Lot 2, Section 23 at the home of Henry D. Miner. I bossed the meeting. I was 2 weeks old. The men disagreed about something, and they made quite a racket, and I began to bawl. And my mother told them they must make less noise or go outside in a hurry. So they concluded to keep more quiet. Amos Saunders was appointed town chairman, H.D. Miner, town clerk, John A. Boone, justice of the peace. And the next section I read in the book was called They Find a Skeleton. Let's see if I can get to the right page here. There we go. I was at the harbor the day they dug the cellar. Oops, I should do a little I need to tell you something else first. Amos Saunders owned the area above the dock. Of course, he owned the dock and then the area. The White Houses would be right up here, which was the boarding house that he built eventually. And then these houses down back in here are probably one of the houses they're going to talk about in this article. And Tom Guinean was the owner of the house we're talking about, and he had been a resident up here for a number of years. I was at the harbor the day they dug the cellar for the house that had been occupied by Tom Guinean for several years. They got down 2 or 3 feet. They found a skeleton with the old-fashioned iron coat buttons covered with cloth, so they knew it could not be an Indian. It seems that Amos Saunders had had a hired man and he had quarreled with him. 3 or 4 days afterward, he said the hired man had went off on a little vessel that had been in the harbor, but the boat that he had gone on took him free. It was thought that he was not the only one who old Saunders had sent to the happy hunting ground. Mr. Schaefer, the poet schoolteacher, said that Saunders tried to kill him once, but he knocked Saunders down with a capstan bar and hit him once or twice for luck after he was down. Saunders and his boys went to Green Bay from here, and they killed a Dutchman going home from the elections. Saunders and his oldest son were arrested, but they were cleared on self-defense. But there were so many Germans in Green Bay that the Saunders family did not consider it a healthy climate for them, so they moved to Minnesota. So reading these in Jesse Miner's book obviously piqued my interest. And but then I got to another section, which was another interesting tidbit. Jesse Miner was carrying the mail back and forth across the door in 1873 and 1874, and he was in Ellison Bay waiting out a snowstorm. And he wrote here, I was waiting for the boss of the shanty to give verdict whether I could stay or had to cross the door in the dark. I picked up a Scandinavian newspaper to kill time and saw where Amos Saunders, an old settler of Door County, Wisconsin, had been killed by wolves in Minnesota. So after killing many others, he died a violent death. Well, what's going on with this guy? Well, sometimes things aren't as they are in the paper. But we'll find out that sometimes they are. So we come to find out that Saunders was not eaten by wolves, actually. He did pass in 1874, though, at the age of 72, and it seems by natural causes. They lived at that time near the Mississippi River at River Falls, which I think I have a picture of here somewhere. There. River Falls, Wisconsin, over on the Mississippi. Pretty close to Minnesota, though. So Jesse was pretty right about that. So I started looking into things and seeing if I could, I periodically looked at things and seeing if we could find out if these were true events. But let's go back to the start of Amos Saunders and find out a little more about his early history. He was born in 1802 in Tewksbury, Massachusetts. And then as a child, they moved with his parents to Albany, Maine. By 1826, when he was 24 years old, they moved again up into Canada, Compton East. Then 2 years later, they moved to, 2 years later is when he got married. And that would be to Caroline Clarice Richardson. They had 3 kids: David Patton Saunders, Theodore, and Mary G. Saunders. Then the family, in 1836, moved to the west side, Ottawa City West. By 1837, though, they were in Cleveland area, and Amos Saunders was working as a crew member on schooners. During this time, in 1838, it's noted that he became a Freemason, which he remained a member of the Freemasons all the way up until his death. And when he was in River Falls, he was a founding member of the Freemason Lodge that's there. Then, by 1839, they find themselves in Green Bay, where he purchased the sloop Rudolph. Oops. And he most likely started sailing the Green Bay Lakes right away in 1839. And probably somewhere over the next 2 years, he must have found Washington Island to his liking. Because he had business dealings in 1841 with the Washington Harbor Company. I found this document from the district court in Brown County where Amos Saunders versus that group there called the Washington Harbor Company. And on the very bottom there, there's a sum that was exchanged for $130. And this would be for some of the property at the Craw, Rainey, Saunders, Young Dock area. So even though Amos was busy in Green Bay and sailing, he was very interested in Washington Island. Oops. Over the next 10 years or so, we come across many brief mentionings in newspapers about Captain Saunders, about his boats, about the ports he went to and the challenges that he faced. Not only was he involved with Washington Island, and sailing between Green Bay, Chicago, and Buffalo, about a 15 or 20-day round trip. But he was also involved in the mercantile business with a partner in Green Bay. Their store was called Saunders and Godin, and it may have looked like this one here. I picked some pictures that looked like perhaps Green Bay or so. This might be a typical Green Bay street scene. I think that's Dousman right there. No, I'm just kidding. Saunders, he seemed to be a shrewd businessman, and he was quite the land buyer. During the same 10-year period, 1841 to 1850 or so, he started purchasing and selling land on Rock Island and on Washington Island. In 1844, on the southeast corner of Rock Island, he purchased 47 acres from the government, making him the first landowner of that piece. And within weeks, he sold most of it off in several parcels, probably to the fishermen who were already squatting there. In 1845, he bought more land around Washington Harbor, eventually owning almost 600 acres around the whole harbor. And then he started setting up his fishery. So even though Rock Island was still settled and years short of its zenith, the forces which would lead everyone to move to Washington Island were already in the works. During his voyages between Green Bay, Buffalo, and Chicago, Saunders found some time to develop his Washington Island holdings. He's the one who built the pier and supplied what they called the buffalo boats with cordwood for fuel. He was also the first wholesale fish buyer for the island. He also had built a storehouse, a cooper and fish house, and an ice house. And I'm sure he had other people build it, but he was the funder of it. By 1848, he had the boarding house built, the White House, and other houses were built nearby that, eventually forming the Irish Village. So this was truly a busy time for Amos Saunders. But now we'll take some time to talk about his sailing adventures. And I'll have a sip of something. After the War of 1812 and up to the 1850s, schooners became the predominant vessels on the lakes. They were the most practical and profitable rig, and of those, the topsail schooner was the best. It was designed for fast trips with heavy payloads. It had good maneuverability, and you could do it with a limited crew. Most of the merchant ships in the early 1800s were two-masted schooners of about 70 feet in length. Saunders may have used a three-masted, and that was about 150 feet. They carried approximately 150 tons, approximately, or 1,500 barrels of cargo, with a crew of 3 or 4 men. And they tried to build them in with full shapes and flat bottoms so that they could squeeze through the shallow spots and the locks with as much cargo as possible. And I read to hear that they were also fitted with centerboards to help improve their sailing abilities. Now here's a little example of some routes that Saunders would probably take. Here's the island up here, and Chicago, and Green Bay. So his store was in Green Bay here, so he would probably depart from there, and not sure when he would go to Chicago. If you go there first, stop at the island, then he'd probably travel up through the Straits of Mackinac up here, down Lake Huron, in through Port Huron, down into the St. Clair River, a little squeeze down there, then past Detroit, down through here to Toledo and Sandusky and Cleveland, cross Lake Erie, and then Buffalo is right about here. So then there was some talk that he was in Sandusky. He would do a port stop there, but mostly it was picking up things in Buffalo. And then, of course, the return trip. Quite a ways. Here's something from the paper in 1843. Oh, I should have mentioned that he bought the sloop Rudolph first in 1839. That was that drawing I showed you, one-masted. By 1842, he bought the Ottawa, which was said to be the largest schooner running on the lake in those days. The storm on Sunday last was quite severe on Lake Erie. The steamer Porter was dismasted and otherwise injured. The brigs Oscala and Ruggles and schooner Constitution were driven back, and the schooner Ottawa loaded with flour, was forced to throw overboard 215 barrels in order to get off a reef on which she was struck. A little loss of profit there. Here's an advertisement from the one of the Green Bay papers in 1843. New goods, new goods. The subscriber has just received at the store formerly occupied by North Barrett, by the schooner Ottawa, direct from the cities of New York and Boston, a general assortment of dry goods and groceries, which we will sell very cheap for cash. The following goods may be found among his stock: beaver clothes, broadcloths, black cashmeres, and on, Kentucky jeans, plaid linseys. Quite a list. Oops. Here we got some stormy weather. The schooner Ottawa, on her downward trip from St. Joseph, ran on a reef near the east sister Lake Erie and was compelled to throw over 200 barrels of flour to get off again. That darn flour is pretty heavy. That was also in 1844. Here's another ad. I really like this one. Grocery and provision store Saunders and Godin would respectfully announce to the people of Green Bay that they have on hand and are constantly receiving direct from eastern markets supplies of family groceries and groceries of all kinds and of the best quality. Having advantage of a direct communication of their own with Buffalo, Cleveland, Chicago, and other places, they are enabled to transport goods to this place at a small expense and sell at a trifling advance from eastern prices. They have just received a lot of flour, always do that, of the best brands, which they will sell, wholesale or retail, lower than can be had elsewhere. Pork, whiskey, and salt will be kept constantly and sold by the barrel or less quantity at very low price. Among their assortment may be found the following: butter, lard, cheese, crackers, hard bread, tea and coffee, maple and brown sugar, spice and ginger, cinnamon, tobacco plug, smoking tobacco, pipes and cigars, powder, shot, lead, almonds, some nuts here. We got mandaria, Brazilian, hickory. There's confectionery, raisins, ginger, everything you need, cloves, etc. Liquors, brandy, gin, wine, rum, port wine, all of which will be sold at the lowest possible prices for cash. I guess they're selling at low prices or something. This is from a Buffalo paper, and they were listing what the schooner Ottawa had picked up. 5,500 bushel wheat, 90 barrels of flour, 31 barrels of HFDO, which I couldn't figure out what that is, and 6 kegs lard, 18 barrels whitefish. Oh, pretty big load. There she is, all laden down with her big barrels and caskets, heading to the island. Oh boy. This is from 1845. The schooner Ottawa from Buffalo is in. Lost her anchor, chain, foresail, topsail, and flying jib, and split her jib. That was a tough one. That's quite the drawing too. I like that one. Now we come to 1847. And this ends up being an interesting year for Mr. Saunders. Captain Saunders, excuse me. We have here May 18th of 1847. Dissolution of partnership. Notice is hereby given that the co-partnership hereto existing between the undersigned under the name and firm of Saunders and Godin at Green Bay is this day dissolved by mutual consent. The demands and accounts due the firm are left with Amos Saunders, who is hereby duly authorized to settle and receive payment of the same. Green Bay, May 18th, 1847. So that something was going on there. But not long after that, another event occurred. And this one was to be a lot bigger deal. This is from the May 5th Green Bay Advocate. Outrage at Green Bay. The Republican of the 21st gives the detail of a daring resistance of the laws that occurred in this place on the Saturday evening previous. It seems that an injunction had been placed in the hands of the undersheriff with directions to serve it immediately upon the schooner Ottawa, Captain Amos Saunders, then lying near the mouth of the Fox River. C.H. White, the deputy, proceeded in a boat to discharge the duty, but threats and resistance on the part of Saunders prevented its execution, and White returned to town. Procuring assistance, he again approached the vessel, but was attacked with clubs, poles, oars, boiling water, melted pitch, and indeed with every weapon upon which the exasperated crew could lay their hands on. The captain then ordered his men to bring the topmast over the bulwarks that it might be used as a battering ram, threatening death to any one who should refuse to aid in this bold defense of the laws. After the officer and several of his posse had been bruised and knocked down, a fire was commenced by the party in the boats with pistols, and the mate of the Ottawa, named Foster, a respectable man from this city, was severely, but it is hoped not dangerously wounded. The infuriated set scattered for a moment, but soon returned to the conflict. Saunders hurled an axe at White, but the latter at that instant was knocked down by a stick of wood, and his life thus saved from the axe. White's party, finding themselves unable to board the vessel, retired. A surgeon was sent on board, and soon after, 4 of the crew attempted to land near Devil's River, which was certainly an appropriate port for such scoundrels, if there is anything in names. And that location, I believe, is down north of Green Bay a ways. Saunders was on board, and although strict watch was kept, he succeeded in landing. On Sunday morning, an armed party took boats and rowed toward the schooner, but as they approached, she hoisted sail and made across the bay. Thus had this pirate captain successfully defied and escaped laws. Such a man should not be suffered to remain at liberty. Well, now we're in trouble. We've got a couple days later here. Great news from Green Bay, schooner Ottawa captured. We published recently an account of the bloody row on the schooner Ottawa at Green Bay and the escape of the vessel from the clutches of the law. The Republican on the 3rd announced the capture of the craft and gives the details of the strategy of Officer Lessey in managing the capture so as to save the effusion of blood. The sheriff and his men lay in wait in ambush The captain and crew landed at the mouth of the creek. The sheriff and the posse were on them, leveled their guns, and demanded a surrender. And the Jack Tars, being out of their element, at once capitulated. The captain was marched a prisoner of war to Green Bay for trial. And according to a postscript in the Republican dated Sunday, 3:00 p.m., the schooner Ottawa has just been brought into port and anchored in the river opposite the residence of Sheriff Leslie. The world will rejoice to hear that order again reigns in Green Bay. Whew. Then, a few days later, this is actually out of the Prairie du Chien paper, 18 May. The Green Bay Advocate says the much talked of schooner Ottawa was taken last week by Sheriff Leslie and brought up and anchored in the river. One great inconvenience in this affair is the loss of one of our best vessels at a time when business most demands a communication with other ports. So it appears that Saunders' business was much missed. Now we come to a very interesting twist in this little event. On the 27th of May, 1847, just a few days after that last article, a proclamation was issued by Henry Dodge, governor of the territory of Wisconsin. Whereas at a session of the District Court for the County of Brown held at Green Bay on the 22nd day of May, 1847, Amos Saunders was convicted of the crime of an assault and thereupon sentenced to imprisonment for the term of 90 days. And whereas an unconditional pardon is solicited in behalf of the said Saunders for reasons which are fully stated by the petitioners, and also for that the said Saunders is deserving of the clemency of the governor of the territory. And in here is some more legalese. In testimony whereof I have caused these letters to be made patent and the great seal of the territory to be affixed, done at Madison this 27th day of May, 1847, signed Henry Dodge, governor. So I'm not sure what to think of all that. Was he, did he do all those things at that incident, or was it, I guess the governor didn't think so. So that was in May. And then in August, another article came out, and I'll read this one in full too. Oops. We published by request the Chicago version of the affair with the Ottawa. The schooner Ottawa versus the newspapers. A few weeks since, a paragraph was going the rounds of the papers headed "Outrage at Green Bay" and giving what purported to be the particulars of the difficulties between the authorities of Green Bay and the captain and crew of the schooner Ottawa. Now the facts in brief are these. While the Ottawa was lying near the town of Green Bay, the captain discovered a boat with a number of persons in it approaching him, which, when within a short distance, he hailed to know what they wanted. The reply was a very savage one, and to the effect that they wanted the vessel and would have it. Captain Saunders replied that they must show proper authority or they could not board. No authority was shown. Indeed, they did not design to inform him of the exact nature of their errand, but went back, leaving him in the dark. The officer soon returned, however, with a large posse, all armed to the teeth, who, as soon as they neared the vessel, fired into the crew, wounding and narrowly escaping the murder of Mr. Foster of this city. When Foster was wounded, the crew of the schooner, who refrained from assailing the boat's crew, who had before refrained from assailing the boat's crew, commenced in earnest with billets of wool that happened to be laying on the deck. At this time, the axe was thrown not by Captain Saunders, as stated in the Chicago Journal, but by another crew member. After this, the warlike posse returned, leaving Captain Saunders in the quiet possession of his vessel. The Ottawa afterward proceeded down the bay on business, and after a few weeks returned to the town of Green Bay, and while on shore settled the business. The manipulation in the journal of Captain Saunders being a pirate will go for what it is worth where he is known. Mr. Foster, the mate of the Ottawa who was wounded, is personally known to us as one of our most respectable and quiet citizens. So we don't know if we have a dark side of Amos Saunders or if he's a good guy. What do you think? Keeps it interesting, that's for sure. So next we have 1848. We have a marine disaster. The schooner Ottawa of Chicago got ashore at the mouth of the Menominee River in Green Bay on the 7th. She was taking a load of lumber at the time and went ashore in a gale. A total loss, $2,000. This isn't, of course, a picture of the Ottawa, but this one's in trouble too. After the Ottawa was scrapped, Amos Saunders bought the schooner Equator. Here we just have an announcement on the 20th of 49 there that schooner Equator was in Racine. So now we are all of a sudden back to 1850. And Captain Saunders has been elected the town chairman. After all those incidents and such, and all that stuff that Jesse Miner was talking about, that's kind of interesting. Interestingly, I found out that Amos Saunders and his family were on the Green Bay census for 1850, not the island census. Oh. Come on, there we are. Nope. They're up here, right here is Amos and Caroline, David, Theodore, Anna, and then these two might be boarders within the at their place. So really, Amos, mostly his residence was in Green Bay, and there was part-time residence with the White House and the fishing industry over in Washington Harbor. Well, by this time, 1850, 1851, the schooner trade was actually kind of dying out, starting to wane, slowly being replaced by the larger and faster steamships, which could carry more and faster. And by 1852, just as fast as he came to the island and bought lots of things, he sold everything, all his holdings on the island to Marsden and James Craw in 1852. And by 1853, he sold the Equator, and then he retired from sailing altogether and just resided in Green Bay. But that's not quite the end of the story, as they say. In 1854, Amos Saunders he got involved in some of the politics of Green Bay and was appointed one of the first aldermen of the North Ward of Green Bay in 1854. And then we come to another incident which casts some doubt about what's going on with Amos Saunders. In 1856, it's the incident mentioned by Jesse Miner about an attack in Green Bay on somebody coming back from elections. This happened at Bay Settlement, which is just north of Green Bay, New Franken, that kind of area, but more toward the water. That area was called Bay Settlement. And I'll read you the newspaper article again. This one's a little tough to read, but I can get through it. Man killed. Oof. A serious affray took place at Bay Settlement on Tuesday of last week, during which Mr. Jacob Shower was so badly injured that he died the next day of the wounds received. A constable by the name of Simons was also seriously injured in endeavoring to make peace. Mr. Shower was a German, and those who were best acquainted with him inform us that he was a peaceable, law-abiding citizen. 3 men have been arrested for killing him, and as the matter is now undergoing a judicial examination, we defer all comments until the final trial, when we shall report proceedings in full. This unfortunate affair creates much excitement in our community, which a fair and impartial trial will dispel. Then, 2 months later, there's an announcement in the Green Bay Advocate. In the case of Amos Saunders, who was tried in the Brown County Circuit Court for manslaughter, the trial lasted 5 days, the jury was out 4 hours, and returned the verdict of not guilty. Well, this incident seems to mark a time when Amos finally decided he should probably leave Green Bay. And actually in 1857, he bought land in the newly just settled area of River Falls, out near the Mississippi River. His son David, at the time, owned 200 or so acres around Green Bay, and he also sold all of his holdings and also moved out west. So from a shipping and mercantile life, Amos Saunders took up farming for several years. Then he was unsettled for a time, moving to nearby Prescott for a few years before returning back to River Falls and once again entering into the mercantile business. He also partnered with his son in the grain business for a few years until failing health caught up with him, and he passed on in March of 1874. The River Falls Journal reports, at the funeral procession, there were about 70 teams in the procession that went to the grave, the largest by far ever seen on a similar occasion in this village. So, that's all the hard information that I found on Amos Saunders. And I guess I can consider them mostly facts because they are in newspapers, but we have to take that kind of light sometimes. But the pardon from the governor and the not guilty on the manslaughter, I don't know, leads me to believe that there was something going on, though. What do you think out there? Are you as ambiguous as I still am? Well, the finding of the skeleton that Jesse Miner wrote about, I've never found any more information about that at all. So that could be, maybe they were wrong about what the skeleton was, but might never know on that one. Or nor the confirmation of the fight with the poet teacher. No other confirmation about that. So we come to another few photos I have here of the Washington Harbor from way back. This is River Falls area, big grain mill area, right on the Kinnickinnick River also. And that's Amos Saunders' grave. In the river, at the River Falls Cemetery, yes. Do we have any questions right away? Well, he was a landowner from 1841 until 1852, so basically 10 years. The question was, how long was he a landowner, or how long was he on the island? But during that time period, he was a sailing most of the time, so I would say that he was definitely a part-time resident. I only have documentation of the one meeting. Yeah, I have documentation of the first meeting in 1850, but I don't see that he was chairman other than 1 year. Because by 1852, he was already selling his holdings and trying to retire out of sailing altogether. From what I can, the question was, did he build the White House? I think that he or whoever he hired did build the White House through a couple of books, Haldimar Holland book for one, and another book that I had. They talked about Amos Saunders starting up the fishing industry and having a nice boarding house. So I think he did have that built, and when Craw got here in 1852, it was already built. And so were some of the buildings, like the storehouse and the ice house. Yes, I believe it is, but sometimes when I look at that, it doesn't seem like quite the right area. But why would steps be moved somewhere? So I know they're right off the road, and the White House, the road went right through the White House basically, because that was the most level area to put a road and follow that ridge that runs where Goodmanson does, and that goes right through where the White House was. Yeah. Any other questions? Here's one of those tall ships out in Sturgeon Bay. We must have some more questions. Come on. Yes. That's a good question. I think in my research that the Richardsons, which was the wife, Caroline, I think she was well off. So they might have had some starting money from that. And that's where he was able to purchase his ships. And I think he was a pretty shrewd businessman though too, and he might have had other landownings besides Washington Island and Rock Island. He might, as his travels about the lakes, he might have invested in other places, what I suspect. I do have another what if kind of a question, and it has to deal with the black colony who was on the island here between 1852 and 1854. Now there was a few black people who were here in 1850 on the island. There was at least one that was on the census. His name was George Woodruff. And I've always wondered, how did he come to the island? Obviously by water, like on a boat, but was it all the way from somewhere like Sandusky, Ohio, on a boat all the way up to the island, or was it just from Chicago or from the Green Bay area? And it's possible that Amos Saunders could take passengers on his boat also. So it came to my mind that perhaps he had black settlers on his boats too, taking passengers. Just a what if. Correct, yeah. And there were several families at one point, probably at its height, and that could be as many as 30 people almost, several families, if they all had kids. So that was quite a group at that time. At the 1850, he was 25 years old, and it just said laborer, but born in Virginia. So if he was 25 years old and he made it to here by 1850, so not sure how, I haven't discovered anything how he got here, but it always intrigues me, the logistics of doing that. Any other questions? How many voted? Well, all of them who showed up? That one I'm not sure off the top of my head. Yeah. I think there was, I can't remember how many families there were in 1850 off the top of my head. Probably not more than 250 people, I don't think, on the island. Most of them, of course, around Washington Harbor, West Harbor. What's that? At the time, only men could vote. Correct. Right. That's true. Well, if there's no more questions, I guess I'll wrap it up for now and say thank you to everybody for coming, and I hope it was enjoyable for you. Thank you.